I did all of that while muted. Um, anyway, okay. I completely lost my train of thought. It was on the oh yes, on the joys of commuting, and why I miss it, and why it's kind of important for a lot of people, even though they might not miss it because I guess they get to enjoy a day without pants or whatever, like yuck. Anyway, that's kind of besides the point. Um, Commuting. Let me just pull up my notebook. Um, Commuting is one of those really interesting joys that I think a lot of people don't really understand. Um, it it feels like a task because it is a task because it takes us from a place where we don't really want to, or it takes us to a place where a lot of us don't really want to be, and so that makes it a little bit difficult simply to see the benefits of such a thing. Oh, I have a streaming delay. Oh, oops. Anyway, uh, that's fine. And so, why is it that we, I guess, can't see the benefits of commuting? Well, I'm of the opinion that a lot of us don't really like our work, and so they find it very very difficult to um, find, or rather to enjoy any part of that particular process. And that's, I mean, at least to me, that's a bit of a shame because I really enjoy commuting. Well, I mean, relatively. Once I once had a few months where I would commute for 2 hours single trip. That wasn't fun. But I would say that to me, a 45-minute commute is actually quite quite good. Granted, a couple caveats there, right? Like not driving. Driving for 45 minutes to go to work in traffic is terrible. Absolutely. Um, Public transit must be pleasant. The city itself must be pleasant. And so that really takes out a lot of unfortunately that really removes a lot of North America from that. But when I'm when I talk about my favorite commuting experience, it's actually even to this day very much remains Hong Kong, where I would take the train and then a minibus, and the minibus winds its way through the mountains to the particular workplace I was going to, and every part of that journey I enjoyed because it was pleasant. It was a way for you, or for myself at least, at that point, to relax, to take a break from not only before and after work or during work, but take a break from life itself. You it's this. How do I explain it? It's almost like some people prefer solitude, and a lot of them think that they prefer solitude in the middle of nowhere or at home, where they're completely locked away from. Oh, I forgot to call the train. Um, you know, where they're not, I guess, open, or they don't see any other people. But to me, that's not really That's not really the right kind of solitude, because as humans, it is not in our nature to be completely alone, as evidenced by enough studies, and none of which I will cite because they are all really boring. But essentially the point really is, it's not about being alone, but rather the commute, especially in nice public transit, is about being alone in society. And that might sound like an oxymoron, but but I think upon reflection, everyone will agree that um, sometimes watching people is just plain fun. Like, just, you look around, you see what everyone does. Occasionally, I will chat to someone who's sitting next to me, or we will look at, oh wow, we're completely out of seats, or we will, like, just kind of enjoy time, have time to sort of be with your own thoughts. And that's not and and yes, you can do that while you're alone in the middle of nowhere. It is, however, not quite the same, because when you're alone in the middle of in the middle of nowhere, the amount of distractions, or the amount of um, novelty, at least to me, the amount of novelty is not quite as evident. Oh, thanks. 2 stars. Yay. You didn't let me build a second track. Silly. Anyway, so the novelty of being alone in the wilderness is not quite the same as the novelty of being in being alone in society. And so, from personal experience, at least, and definitely because I think partially it was, Hong Kong and all the other big cities I commuted in. Um, it's Humans are much more interesting compared to nature, and and perhaps it shouldn't be surprising that humans are more interesting than nature, but I feel like we forget that humans are more interesting, or more prone to surprise us than nature does, because nature has sort of settled into its ecosystem, its niches, over you know tens, hundreds of thousands of years. And yet humans, we haven't been around for quite that long. Well, in our current state, with our current society, in fact, we've really only been in this current society for what, 50 odd years. And if we want to talk about, the society with the internet, included 20 at most, right? And so and so humans are a much more interesting thing to observe when you're alone, and a much more thought-provoking group of boys and girls than I think most other species, and most other. What is that? Oh, that's a commuter line. Got it. What is that? Oh, okay. Okay, we're good. That's an entrance. Interesting. Um, and so the very nature of our commute, or sorry, of our society, means that when we're commuting, we're even though we're alone, we're seeing a lot of society, and that has a knock-on effect on our mental health. Right? Like, I keep getting distracted throughout this talk, but essentially the point I was laboriously trying to get to earlier was that I find it easier to reflect on both my own actions and the actions of people around me if I'm doing that reflection in society. Um, and that's simply because I can. It's easier to pull examples. If I have examples, I can just open my eyes and look at. Whereas if I'm in the middle of nowhere, some random lake. It might be beautiful, it might be amazing, it might stir all sorts of poetic interests, but it doesn't help organize your thoughts, or my thoughts at least, about how about our own actions and the actions of those around us. And that might not sound like the break that I claimed commuting is, but to me it is, because it's sort of completely divorced from the day to day actions that we have to carry out. Like the tasks that we must do because we are human, if that makes sense. Um, so things like eating, things like working, all of those wonderful, wonderful things that give us lots and lots of, well, enough resources to not die from not eating food. Um, and that just makes it much more fun to reflect upon when we have the time to do it. And so to me, um, that fun comes when we're doing it in a, how do I say this? To me, the fun comes when we're doing it in society. I feel like I'm talking about the same points over and over again. But really, I think I'm, at least personally for me, I'm not getting enough of that time where I'm able to reflect while being quote unquote alone in society. And if I think about it really hard, that's probably the point of these random recordings that I'm doing, because I don't have any other way of organizing my thoughts quite as quite as well as I would do if I were on a commute, right? So I think that kind of almost almost peacefulness. I say almost because obviously there are things that will annoy us. There are things that will be particularly ridiculous on an everyday commute. But those are kind of wonderful things, because those are things that define our day to day, and I'd rather be annoyed by a day to day issue than I would be by a issue that has much more capacity of being dangerous. If that if that makes sense. So that's that's really the point of the commute. Um, in summary, gives gives you a little bit of time to be by yourself, but doesn't give you such quiet and such um, divorce from society that you are such divorce from society that your thoughts are unable to be stimulated by society. It it sounds really weird, and I'm sure basically nobody will understand it. But that is that's that really. Um, and I think and we'll leave it there for today. Yeah. Oh wait, no, I completely forgot to comment about the game. Um, the why I decided to talk about the commute today is really because this game is quite fun. Reminds me of some of the better and some of the worst built train stations I have seen in my years of being alive, and I, oops, I actually like the way that it works, and I hope that I can live up to some of those good stations that I've seen, and create some interesting. Ooh, what? What is that? What are you doing? Anyway, doesn't matter. Create some interesting stations for all these little bits and bobs and bits, computer generated AI to enjoy. I don't that was purely to get it over the 15-minute mark. Yeah.